The lonely snow, the night was heavy with snow. The wind howled across the frozen fields, carrying sharp flakes that cut the skin like tiny blades. The world was silent except for the storm. Houses stood far away, their lights hidden behind curtains. No one walked the streets. No one dared. But in the middle of the storm, a small figure lay curled up in the snow. She was not human. Her skin glowed faintly like the pale light of the moon. Her hair was thin and silver, spread out on the frozen ground. She looked no older than a human child, maybe 6 or 7 years old. But her eyes, when they fluttered half open, revealed something strange. They were not the eyes of Earth. They shone softly with colors that shifted like the northern lights. She was an orphan. Alone. The snow fell harder, burying her small body little by little. She pulled her thin arms around herself, trying to keep warm, but the cold bit deeper. Each breath came out weak, turning to mist in the air before fading away. Her lips trembled as she whispered words in a language no human could understand. A name, a plea. She was calling for her parents, but no one came. The storm only answered with silence. Her tiny body shook. She was not built for this world, not built for this kind of cold. The stars above were hidden by clouds, and she felt smaller than ever, like the whole sky had turned against her. Her chest rose and fell slowly. Her strength was fading. Still, she tried to stay awake, tried to fight the sleep that pulled at her eyes. She had learned that sleep in the snow could mean death. But she was only a child, and the cold was stronger than her will. Her vision blurred. The snow around her looked like endless white waves stretching forever. She imagined she was floating in space, lost between stars. She saw flashes of memory, faces she loved, voices she missed. A warm hand once held hers. A voice had told her to be brave. But that voice was gone now. Her little hand reached out, touching nothing but ice. Her body curled tighter. Her silver hair stuck to her face as the snow piled on. For a moment, the glow of her skin flickered like a candle about to go out. Still, she held on. The storm grew louder, as if the earth itself wanted to bury her secret forever. No one would find her here in this corner of nowhere. She would disappear under the snow, a forgotten spark from another world. But deep inside, she refused to give up. Her tiny heart beat slow but steady. Somewhere, she believed, there was hope. Somewhere someone would notice. Her eyes closed at last. The glow around her dimmed. She drifted into a half-sleep, a place between dreams and death. In that dream, she saw a sky full of stars. She was not cold there. She was safe. A tall figure stood at the edge of the dream, watching her. She thought it was her father. She reached out with both hands. But when the figure stepped closer, it was not her father. It was someone else, a shadow, a stranger. She gasped and opened her eyes again. The storm had not stopped. The snow was deeper now. She was weaker. The glow from her body pulsed once, faint and fragile, like a signal to the universe. A signal of life waiting for someone to see it. The world around her was wide and empty. Roads were buried, trees bent under the weight of ice. If anyone walked here, they would not expect to find her. She was too small, too strange, too lost. Yet in the distance, the sound of footsteps echoed faintly. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Someone was walking through the storm. A human, the orphan's eyes half closed, barely noticed. Her body wanted to rest forever. But the sound of steps was real. The storm swallowed most of the noise, but the stranger was coming closer. Each step crunched louder in the snow. A figure, tall and broad, moved against the white wind. He wore a heavy coat, his face hidden by a scarf. He looked like any man on his way home, fighting the weather. He did not yet see her. The orphan tried to lift her hand, but it fell back weakly. The snow was too heavy. She wanted to cry out, but her voice was gone. Only a faint breath left her lips like a whisper. Her body shook once more, then stilled. The glow from her skin flickered, weaker and weaker. The man stopped. He thought he heard something. A sound soft and strange, carried by the wind. He turned his head. His eyes searched the white field. At first he saw nothing, just snow, snow, and more snow. Then faintly he noticed a glow. He froze. It was not the glow of a lamp or fire. It was something else. Something alive. The storm roared between them. The orphan lay still, almost buried. The man stood frozen, unsure if his eyes were lying. The snow fell heavier, closing the world in around them. Between life and death, a meeting was about to begin, and the story of the lonely snow was only beginning. The stranger appears. The man walked with his head down, shoulders heavy under the weight of snow. His boots sank deep with every step, leaving broken tracks across the white field. The wind hit his face like needles and his scarf was already wet from frost. He muttered to himself, angry at the storm. The night was too cold, too late, and he should have stayed inside. But work had kept him long and the bus had broken down miles away. So here he was, walking through a storm, hoping to reach his cabin before his body gave in. He was not a hero, just an ordinary man fighting the weather. But fate had other plans. As he walked, something tugged at his senses. A strange feeling like eyes watching him. He stopped. The storm raged around him, filling the silence. Nothing, only snow and darkness. Still, his instincts told him he was not alone. He took another step, then froze again. This time he saw it, faint, almost hidden. A glow. At first he thought it was a trick of the eyes. Snow sometimes caught light in strange ways. But this glow was steady, pulsing like a heartbeat. It came from a small shape lying in the snow. The man frowned. His breath formed clouds as he muttered, "What in the world?" He stepped closer, boots crunching slowly, carefully. His heart began to pound. The glow grew brighter as he neared. Then the shape took form. It was a child. She was lying on her side, her body almost buried. Her skin was pale, but not the pale of frostbite. It shimmered with light, soft and strange. Her hair was silver, spread across the snow like threads of glass. The man's first thought was confusion. His second was fear. He stumbled back a step. His mind screamed at him, "This is not human." Every story, every warning about strange things beyond Earth came rushing into his head. Movies, old tales, government secrets, aliens. This was something not meant for him to see, yet he could not move away. The girl stirred weakly. Her tiny chest rose and fell. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came out. Her eyes opened just a little, glowing with shifting colors. Blue, green, violet. For a second, those eyes met his. The man's breath caught. They were not human eyes, but they were not empty either. They were full of fear, full of pain, and something else. A silent plea. The man shook his head. No, no, no. This isn't real. I'm just tired, just the storm playing tricks. But when he looked again, she was still there, still glowing, still trembling in the snow. She was dying. His chest tightened. Every part of him wanted to turn and leave. This was not his problem. This was dangerous. Whatever she was, she did not belong here. And yet, another part of him, a quieter, stronger part, whispered that it did not matter what she was. What mattered was simple. She was a child freezing in the snow. The man stood there, torn in two. The wind howled. Snow piled on her small frame. She would vanish soon if he did nothing. Finally, he cursed under his breath, pulled off his heavy coat, and knelt beside her. The warmth of his body spilled into the freezing air. He laid the coat over her carefully like a shield. For a moment he hesitated, his hands shaking. The second the coat touched her skin, something strange happened. Heat rushed through his hands, not burning, but alive. It was as if the girl absorbed his warmth, pulling life from his body into hers. Her glow brightened faintly, pulsing once like a weak star. The man gasped. What the hell? But then he saw her lips move. A single breath escaped, softer than snow. He did not understand the word, but the meaning was clear enough. It was thanks. His fear softened. She was not a monster. She was not a threat. She was only a lost child, fighting to live. The man looked around nervously. The storm covered everything, but his instinct screamed that time was short. If someone or something was chasing her, they could be near. He lifted her gently. She was lighter than he expected, fragile as glass. Her glow warmed against his chest as he cradled her. Step by step, he turned back toward the forest path that led to his cabin. His boots sank deep, his body strained under the storm, but he did not stop. He could not leave her. Behind him, the snow quickly erased all trace of where she had been lying. It was as if the earth wanted to hide the truth of her existence, but the man knew the truth now. He carried it in his arms. The girl's head rested against his shoulder, her eyes half closed. She was breathing more steadily, though still weak. Her tiny fingers clutched at his scarf as if holding on to the last thread of life. The man whispered to himself, "What have I done?" He did not know who she was. He did not know what she was. All he knew was that his life had just changed forever. The storm raged on, but inside his arms a faint light survived. The human choice, the cabin door creaked open, and the man pushed inside with the girl in his arms. The wind howled behind him before he forced the door shut. Snow clung to his boots and shoulders, melting into puddles on the wooden floor. The fire in the stone fireplace burned low, giving off a weak glow. He set her down gently on the old couch near the fire. For a moment he just stood there staring. The coat he had wrapped around her was soaked. Her silver hair clung to her face. Her skin glowed faintly, dimmer now but still not natural. She was real. The man rubbed his face with trembling hands. His heart pounded, his breath uneven. Every instinct told him to run, to push her outside, to pretend he had never seen her. This was too big for him. This was dangerous, but then she made a sound. It was soft, weak. A whimper. Her small body shivered as if even the fire could not reach her bones. She tried to curl tighter under the coat like she had done in the snow. The man froze. He had seen many things in his life, storms, fights, death, but he had never seen something like this. Something not of Earth. And yet in that moment she did not look like an alien. She looked like a child, scared and fragile. He sighed, walking to the fire. He tossed in more wood, poked at the flames until they roared brighter. Heat filled the room, spreading to the couch. The girl stirred. Her eyelids fluttered. Slowly she opened her eyes. The man stiffened. Her eyes were unlike anything he had ever seen. Colors shifted inside them, flowing like rivers of light, green, blue, violet, gold. They locked onto his face, weak but steady. For a heartbeat, the man forgot fear. There was something human in that look, something he understood. Trust. The girl parted her lips, speaking a word in her strange tongue. He could not understand it, but her tone was clear. She was asking something, pleading. The man knelt beside her. I don't know what you're saying, kid. His voice cracked. But you're safe here, at least for now. Her eyes softened. A faint glow pulsed from her chest as if answering. The man felt warmth spread through his own chest. It was not heat from the fire, it was something deeper, stranger. But it did not frighten him this time. It only made him feel responsible. He shook his head. What am I doing? This isn't my problem. He stood pacing. If anyone finds out I brought you here, the government, the army, whoever's out there, I'm done. My life is done. But his eyes kept returning to her. Each time the same battle rose inside him. Fear on one side, pity on the other. The girl coughed weakly. The sound was too small, too painful. And with that sound, his choice grew clearer. He grabbed a blanket, wrapped it around her carefully. She shivered less. Her breathing steadied. The man sat down in the chair across from her, leaning forward with his hands clasped. He studied her like a puzzle he couldn't solve. Who was she? Where had she come from? Why was she alone in the snow? Questions burned in his mind, but answers would not come. Instead, silence filled the room. Only the fire cracked and hissed. After a while, he spoke softly, almost to himself. You shouldn't even be alive out there. But you fought. You held on. He paused. That means something. The girl's eyes closed. A faint smile touched her lips, brief but real. Then she drifted into sleep. The man leaned back, exhaling. His choice was made, though he would not admit it yet. He could not abandon her, not now. Not ever. But outside, the storm had not ended. Through the cracks of the cabin, wind moaned like a warning. Beyond the forest, lights moved, strange lights that did not belong to Earth. They pulsed in the sky, scanning, searching. The man did not see them yet. He only sat in his chair, watching the child sleep, unaware that his decision had already tied him to a danger far greater than the storm. He whispered to the fire, "Whatever you are, I'll keep you safe tonight." The fire roared brighter as if answering. Shadows danced along the cabin walls. The girl stirred again in her sleep. Her small hand reached out from the blanket and clutched the edge of his coat, still draped near her. Even in dreams, she held onto him. The man's throat tightened. He looked at her one last time before closing his eyes, resting in the chair. His heart was heavy with fear, but also with resolve. For the first time in years, he felt needed. And in the silence of that frozen night, a bond was born. Neither of them knew what waited beyond the storm. Neither knew how long the safety would last. But the man had made his choice. The orphan was no longer alone. The shelter. The storm calmed by morning. The cabin stood quiet under a blanket of snow, smoke drifting lazily from the chimney. The world outside was white and still, as if nothing had ever happened. Inside, the fire burned low but steady. The man stirred awake in his chair, stiff from the night. His eyes opened slowly, searching the room. For a moment he wondered if it had all been a dream. But then he saw her. The girl still lay on the couch, wrapped in the old blanket. Her breathing was slow but stronger than before. The glow of her skin had faded during the night, leaving only faint traces like moonlight beneath her skin. She looked more human now, just a child asleep after a hard night. The man rubbed his eyes and stood. His joints cracked as he walked to the small kitchen corner. He filled a kettle with water, placed it on the stove, and lit the flame. The cabin smelled faintly of smoke, wood, and wet clothes. He kept glancing at her. Every few seconds his eyes went back, checking if she was still breathing, still alive. The kettle hissed. He poured hot water into a mug and sipped slowly, his hands trembling from more than cold. What now? He couldn't keep her here. He couldn't tell anyone either. If he called the authorities, they would take her away. And he knew deep down, they wouldn't treat her like a child. They would treat her like a specimen. He looked at her again. She shifted slightly, pulling the blanket closer. Her silver hair glimmered faintly in the firelight. No, he couldn't give her up. Not after last night, the man sighed. You've turned my life upside down, kid. A sound answered him. It was soft, like the hum of a violin string. The girl stirred awake, her strange eyes opening slowly. They met his, full of weariness, but also something new, curiosity. The man froze, mug halfway to his lips. Morning, I guess. The girl tilted her head. She did not understand his words, but his tone made her relax. She sat up slowly, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. The man noticed marks on her arms. Thin, jagged scars ran across her pale skin. They weren't scratches from the forest. They looked deliberate, as if someone or something had hurt her. His chest tightened. Whoever she was running from, they hadn't just left her. They had hunted her. The girl looked around the cabin. Her eyes lingered on the fire. Slowly, she stretched her small hand toward it. The flames, instead of burning brighter, seemed to bend toward her, drawn as if she were calling them. The man's jaw dropped. The fire flickered, leaned, then grew taller for a moment. When she pulled her hand back, the flame settled again, steady and calm. The girl turned to him, blinking, as if asking whether she had done something wrong. He swallowed. That was you? She tilted her head again, then gave the faintest smile. The man shook his head, running a hand through his hair. All right, fire obeys you. Snow doesn't kill you. And you glow. What else am I going to find out? She didn't answer, of course, but she did something else. With a small effort, she reached for the mug in his hand. He hesitated, then handed it to her carefully. She sniffed the steam, then sipped. She coughed at the heat, but drank again, slower this time. The man chuckled softly. Guess some things are the same no matter where you're from. For a moment, the room felt almost normal. Just a man and a child sharing morning warmth. But outside, the world had not forgotten her. Through the trees beyond the cabin, faint shadows moved. Strange lights pulsed briefly in the distance, then vanished. They were searching still. The man had not seen them yet, but the girl had. Her smile faded as her eyes flicked toward the window. She pulled the blanket tighter, her body tensing. The man noticed. He followed her gaze, saw nothing, but his gut twisted. He crouched near her. They're still out there, aren't they? The girl didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her fear was clear. The man rubbed his face. All right. Then we stay quiet. We stay hidden. No one finds you here. The girl studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out her small hand and touched his sleeve. The touch was warm, almost electric. It wasn't just contact. It was trust. The man felt the weight of it. He wasn't just hiding her now. He was protecting her. The fire crackled loudly as if agreeing. The man stood and went to check the windows, making sure the shutters were tight. He moved through the cabin like a soldier preparing for a siege, even though he didn't know what kind of enemy he faced. The girl watched him silently. Her strange eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. When he returned to the couch, she was still awake, still watching him. He sat in the chair again, leaning forward. You're safe here, he said softly, even though he knew she couldn't understand. As long as I'm breathing, you're safe. Her eyes softened again. She curled into the blanket and let sleep take her once more, the trust between them deepening. The man leaned back, staring at the fire. His life had been quiet, lonely, ordinary. Now it had changed forever. Outside, the snow hid their world, but danger was already moving closer, and the cabin, their fragile shelter, would soon be tested. The mystery. The next 2 days passed in uneasy silence. The storm had ended, leaving the world outside calm and bright. The snow glittered under the pale winter sun, pure and untouched. But inside the cabin, the air was thick with tension. The man moved carefully, his every action slower than usual. He kept the fire alive, checked the windows, and stepped outside only to gather wood or water. Each time his eyes swept the horizon, searching for movement. He saw nothing. Still, he felt it, something out there, waiting. The girl recovered little by little. She ate the food he gave her, though clumsily. Bread, soup, pieces of fruit, things she seemed unfamiliar with. Her body gained strength, but her silence remained. She spoke sometimes in her strange language, soft words that sounded like music, but he could not understand. Her eyes, though, said enough. Fear lingered there, mixed with curiosity. When she looked at him, it was with cautious trust, as if she wanted to believe he would not hurt her. One evening, as the fire crackled low, the man noticed something new. She sat on the rug near the fireplace, her hands folded in her lap. The flames bent toward her, glowing brighter as if they loved her presence. Then, without moving closer, she whispered something, soft, almost like singing. The fire leapt higher, the man froze. It wasn't an accident. She was controlling it. His mouth went dry. "You can command fire?" The girl blinked at him, tilting her head. Then she reached toward the flames again. The fire swayed like it was bowing to her. The man leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "What are you?" She did not answer, but later, when she thought he wasn't looking, he saw her arms again. The scars. Not old scratches, but deep marks burned into her skin like brands. Shapes, symbols, they weren't random. Someone had carved them there. The man's stomach turned. Whoever had done that hadn't wanted to protect her. They had wanted to own her. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, staring out into the snow. The silence outside felt wrong. Too heavy, too empty. Then he saw it. A light. It flashed between the trees, faint but unmistakable. Not the light of a lantern or a car, but something colder. White. Precise. It swept slowly across the forest, searching. The man's breath caught. He ducked down, heart pounding. His eyes widened as he realized someone was looking. He turned back toward the girl. She was awake, her glowing eyes wide with terror. She clutched the blanket around her and shook her head violently, as if telling him not to make a sound. The man crouched beside her, whispering, "It's them, isn't it?" She didn't reply. But the tears in her eyes were answer enough. He pulled the fire low, covering the glow with ashes. Darkness filled the cabin, leaving only faint moonlight through the shutters. The light outside swept across the snow again, closer this time. The man's hand tightened on the rifle above the fireplace. His palms were slick with sweat. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a fighter. But every instinct told him that if those lights found the girl, she would be taken, and he would never see her again. The minutes dragged like hours. The lights moved back and forth, closer then farther. At one point, a shadow passed across the window, tall and unnatural. The man held his breath, his finger trembling on the rifle. Then, silence. The light faded. The shadow disappeared. The forest was dark again. The man exhaled shakily, his whole body weak with relief, but the girl did not relax. She still clutched the blanket, her eyes locked on the window. Her breathing was fast and shallow. The man sat beside her. "They're after you, aren't they?" She finally looked at him, eyes wet with fear. Slowly she nodded. The man's chest tightened. So it was true. She hadn't just been lost. She had been hunted. He rubbed his face, staring at the floor. Why? Why chase a child? Of course she could not answer. But in his mind he began to put the pieces together. The scars, the powers, the fear in her eyes. Whoever hunted her wasn't looking for family. They were looking for control, and now she was in his home. The man looked at her again. She was still trembling, but when his eyes met hers, she reached out weakly. Her fingers touched his sleeve the same way she had before. It was a plea. Not to run, not to abandon her. The man swallowed hard. His voice was rough when he spoke. "All right, they want you, but they'll have to go through me first." The girl blinked, her tears shining in the dim light. Slowly she nodded again. The man leaned back against the wall, gripping his rifle tighter. The snow outside was calm, but he knew it would not last. The mystery was no longer just who she was. It was who hunted her, and how long before they found her again. The fire whispered low, its glow hiding in the ashes. The cabin was dark, but inside 2 souls sat awake, one small and fragile, the other human but unyielding. The night was far from over. The hunters. The night was darker than before. The sky held no stars, only thick clouds that pressed low over the forest. The air felt heavy, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. The man sat near the window, his rifle across his lap. He had not slept. His eyes were sharp, searching every shadow outside. The girl slept lightly on the couch, the blanket pulled up to her chin. She did not glow as much now, but a faint shimmer still lingered around her, like the echo of starlight. The cabin was silent except for the crackle of the fire. Too silent. Then the silence broke. A low hum rolled across the trees. Not the sound of wind, not the sound of any engine he knew. It was deeper, heavier, vibrating through the ground itself. The man's chest tightened as he rose slowly to his feet. The girl's eyes snapped open. She sat up, her face pale with fear. Her hands trembled as she pointed toward the window. The man turned. Through the gaps in the shutters, he saw them. Figures moved among the trees, tall, armored, their bodies reflecting the faint light of the snow. Their steps were too smooth, too controlled. Not human soldiers, something else. At their sides, strange lights flickered, scanning the ground. Searching, the man's pulse pounded in his ears. They had found the cabin. He crouched beside the girl. "Listen to me. Stay quiet. Don't move unless I say." She nodded quickly, clutching the blanket like a shield. The hum grew louder. The ground beneath the cabin trembled as if something heavy pressed against it. Then came the sound of boots crunching snow, closer and closer. The man raised his rifle, his hands shaking. He had hunted deer before, but this was no deer. This was no animal. These were things far beyond his world, and he was about to stand against them with nothing but an old rifle and courage. A shadow passed across the window. Then another. Then 3 more. They surrounded the cabin. The girl whimpered, covering her mouth with both hands to stay silent. Her glowing eyes brimmed with tears. The man whispered, "It's all right. I've got you." He didn't believe his own words, but he said them anyway. The front door rattled suddenly. A deep, metallic voice spoke in a language he couldn't understand. The sound was harsh, cold, and commanding. The door rattled again, harder this time. The man steadied his rifle. His breath fogged in the cold air. The voice outside grew louder, repeating its command. Then silence. For a moment, the world froze. Then, bang! The door shook as something slammed against it. Wood splintered. The girl cried out softly, burying her face in the blanket. The man gritted his teeth. "Over my dead body," he muttered. The door slammed again. A crack split the wood. Snow blew in through the gap. The man aimed at the door. He didn't know if bullets would hurt them. He didn't care. He had no choice. The girl suddenly stood, trembling but determined. She raised her small hands. The fire in the fireplace bent toward her, roaring higher, hotter, filling the cabin with fierce light. The man glanced at her, startled. "You can fight?" Her glowing eyes met his. She nodded, though her body shook with fear. The door splintered again. One more hit and it would break. The man crouched low, rifle ready. "Then we fight together." The final slam shattered the door. Wood burst inward, scattering across the floor, and the hunters stepped inside. They were taller than men, their armor black and silver, their helmets glowing with red lines that cut through the dark. Their hands carried long weapons that hummed with energy. Their movements were smooth, precise, like machines built for war. The man fired. The rifle cracked loud in the cabin. The first bullet struck one of them in the chest, sparking off its armor. The figure staggered but did not fall. The hunters turned their glowing eyes toward him. The girl screamed. The fire roared, shooting upward like a wave. It crashed into the intruders, flames wrapping around their armor. The room lit up in blinding orange. The hunters staggered back, their armor hissing under the heat. One raised its weapon and fired. A beam of light struck the wall, blasting wood into splinters. The man dove behind the chair, dragging the girl down with him. His heart thundered. His rifle felt useless, but he loaded another round. The girl's hands shook as fire licked around her fingers, waiting to be unleashed again. The cabin shook under the fight. Heat, light, and sound clashed in the small space. The hunters advanced, step by step, their glowing eyes locked on the girl. The man realized then, he was not just protecting her. He was standing between her and an entire force determined to take her back. And he knew, even as fear gripped him, that he would not let them win. The cabin was no longer a shelter. It was a battlefield. And tonight the hunters had come. The decision, the cabin was no longer quiet. It was a storm of fire, light, and splintering wood. Flames bent and cracked under the girl's trembling hands, wrapping around the intruders like living ropes. The hunters staggered but did not fall. Their armor glowed red-hot where the fire struck, yet they pressed forward with relentless steps. The man fired again, the rifle kicking against his shoulder. A bullet struck one of the hunters in the joint of its arm and sparks burst out. The figure hissed in pain, dropping its weapon. The man felt a surge of hope. Maybe they weren't invincible after all. But there were too many. The hunters fanned out inside the cabin, their glowing helmets turning toward the girl. They didn't care about him. He was nothing to them. She was the target. The girl cried out, her fire blazing higher. The wooden walls trembled as heat spread through the room. She looked terrified, but she stood firm, her small hands raised as if she were a shield. The man ran to her side, crouching low. His voice was rough but steady. "They want you, but they'll have to get through me first." She turned her glowing eyes to him. For a moment, the fear in her face melted into something else. Trust, complete and pure. The hunters advanced again. The man fired. The girl screamed, unleashing a wave of fire so fierce it shook the entire cabin. Flames swallowed two of the hunters, forcing them back through the broken door into the snow. But the others kept coming. One raised its weapon. A beam of energy shot past the man's head, scorching the wall. Another beam struck the table, shattering it into pieces. The man pulled the girl behind him, shielding her with his body. His rifle clicked empty. He cursed under his breath, tossing it aside. All he had left were his fists and his will. The hunters closed in. Then something strange happened. The girl's glow brightened, stronger than ever before. Her fear turned into something sharper, resolve. She stepped out from behind him, her tiny body trembling but steady. Her hands rose higher and the fire obeyed. It wasn't just flame this time. It was light. A brilliant pulse spread from her chest, filling the cabin with blinding brightness. The hunters staggered, their armor sparking violently under the force. The man shielded his eyes. He felt warmth spread through him, not burning but alive. It was her power and she was sharing it. When the light faded, two hunters lay collapsed, their armor smoking. The others stumbled back, regrouping at the doorway. The leader raised its hand, making a sharp gesture. The remaining hunters retreated into the snow, their glowing eyes fixed on the girl. The hum in the air grew louder, and above the trees a dark shape moved, a ship massive and silent, hovering low. The man's stomach turned. This wasn't over. It was only beginning. The girl collapsed to her knees, drained. Her glow dimmed again, flickering like a candle in the wind. The man knelt beside her, pulling her close. "You did it. You fought them off." Her small hands clung to his coat. Her voice came weak, her words still strange to him, but he understood the meaning. She was asking one thing: "Don't leave me." The man looked out at the forest, at the shadow of the ship waiting above. His jaw tightened. He knew then that his life would never return to normal. He could walk away, pretend none of this ever happened. He could hand her over and save himself. That would be the easy choice. But as he looked at her, this tiny child who had fallen asleep in the snow, who had clung to his coat, who had trusted him with her life, he realized something. She wasn't his burden. She was his responsibility. He rose to his feet, lifting her in his arms once more. Her glow flickered faintly against his chest. He looked toward the broken door where snow drifted inside. The hunters would return. The ship above was proof, but he would not run. He stepped outside into the cold night. The forest stood silent, but the air hummed with unseen power. The hunters watched from the shadows, their red eyes burning. The man raised his voice, steady and firm. "You'll have to kill me before you take her." The girl stirred weakly in his arms, her glow pulsing in time with his words. Together they faced the darkness. For a long moment the forest held its breath. The hunters did not move. The ship above shifted slowly as if considering. Then without warning it pulled back into the clouds, vanishing into the night sky. The hunters melted into the trees, their glowing eyes fading one by one. The man stood in the snow, breathing hard, clutching the girl. His body shook with exhaustion, but he did not let go. The girl opened her eyes, faint but steady. She looked up at him with something new in her gaze. Not just fear, not just trust, hope. He nodded, tightening his hold on her. You're safe. As long as I live, you're safe. The snow fell softly around them, covering the broken tracks of battle. The cabin behind them smoked, broken but still standing. The war was not over. The hunters would return. But tonight the choice had been made. A human and an alien orphan, bound together by fire and survival, had become something greater than either of them alone. And their story, whatever it was meant to be, had only just begun.